Welcome back to another episode of the Checkered Roots podcast. Today we have something a little bit different. And as you're going to find in this series, in this podcast, in all of these interviews, however you want to call it, we are going to dive into a lot of different types of racing, which I think is really cool because the motorsports community as a whole is been very inviting to just a guy who doesn't know anything about racing and wants to get involved in it. As I've said many times, we have about any kind of motorsport you can think of, and I'm really excited to start learning about more of them. With that said, I'd like to welcome Mr. Shawn OdeGaard. He is a drag racer out of Minnesota. So without further ado, Mr. Shawn, how are you doing tonight?
Doing good. How about you?
Doing good, brother. Doing good. Well,
Good.
why don't we? I kind of mentioned where you're from. You don't have to tell me the exact town, but why don't you kind of mention to the people where you're from, what you race, and what you do for work for a living?
So I am from Madelia, Minnesota. It's a small town. It's in southern Minnesota. I drag race a 1980 Malibu. It's in the Mod ET division. It's a very small. It's IHRA, so it's a step down from NHRA, and it's a little more hometown. And I'm actually a police officer in my town here.
Awesome, man. Well, hey, thank you for serving the community. I know I don't live up there, but
My pleasure.
that's a very commendable thing. So thank you for that.
Yeah,
Um,
it's my pleasure.
so I really, and I know I told you this a little bit before recording, but I don't know Jack Diddley about drag racing or anything like that. I see that we both share a common interest with Cletus McFarland's channel here, and that is about the extent of my drag racing experience. And I feel like a lot of listeners will echo that same sentiment. So we're gonna be here to learn about it tonight. And like I was telling you before recording, hell man, maybe you change my mind and I
Yep,
find a new passion. So why don't you walk me through a little bit
maybe.
about how did you get into that? What drew you towards that? Because I feel like it's kind of a niche in a certain respect. I mean, racing's a niche in itself, anyways. But what made you want to go to drag racing?
Yeah, so my dad was actually an IMCA modified division dirt car racer back when I was just a little kid. And he retired from it because I was going into school and my brother was born and all that kind of stuff. So he retired from it. We kept going to the dirt track and just kind of spectating and never really got into the racing. I knew that my dad raced was about it. And we decided to go down to our local drag strip, which was 2.5 hours away, and it was the closest one. And we actually met up with a buddy of my dad's. And the first pass that I watched of racing, drag racing, my dad's buddy wrecked his car,
Oh shit!
and we just helped him load up. And I could tell right away that it was very family oriented. Everybody shared secrets because we're competing against each other, but we're only competing against one person, and it's one person at a time. Yes, you have rounds and you have to see everybody, but you're still racing one person at a time. So I really like that. I was 14 years old when this happened. Um, 6 months later, we bought a race car. We just sight unseen bought a race car. It'd been sitting for how many years? It'd been sitting since 2001, before I was born. And we just decided to build this car. It didn't really have a big motor in it, but I was 14 years old. Everything was fast to me then. So we just started racing from there. The next year, we were drag racing already.
Hell yeah, dude. Um, and forgive me for the ignorance here, but it almost feels like, and again, this is just from what I've watched, but it feels like a lot of drag racing is it's almost like you're racing yourself in some respect too, though, isn't it? Because like everybody knows, like I
Yeah.
guarantee you, and maybe I'm not, maybe I'm wrong here, but what is your PB? What is your best quarter mile time that you've ever ripped?
The best quarter mile time I have ever put down was a 10:50. That was with an old motor that really wanted to blow up, and I just couldn't let it go. The next year, we never went quarter mile racing after that.
Oh,
We
so
put a bigger motor in it.
you only do eighth mile.
8 mile, yep. It's easier on our motors, and there's one more local
So
that we
okay, so
can run every week.
let me follow it up though with this. And what is the best eighth mile time you've ever put down?
Best 8 mile time in my car I've ever put down was a 6:49 at 104 miles an hour.
So
And it was probably the most, yeah.
so
Go ahead.
the where I was heading with that though is when you're racing against yourself. So you can tell me down to the thousandth of a second and exactly how fast you were going. So you're now, and like I said, correct me if I'm wrong, but you're now racing against yourself to beat that time. So that's what I think's cool about drag racing is yeah, you're gonna line up and you're gonna race somebody who's on the other side of the tree with you, but at the same time, like you are trying to beat your time almost every single time, and the minor adjustments that you're making just to beat yourself. I could probably ask 100 dirt racers to say, "Hey, what's your best lap time on this track?" And they'd probably be like, "I don't know, 17 something." You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
that's really,
Mhm.
I think that's a cool part of drag racing.
Yeah, and my car is like it's very entry level. It still kind of is just because, throwing money at it wasn't always the main object. The main object was to do it with my parents, my mom, my dad, my brother all went to the racetrack. We all traveled together and we did it as a family. If we won, we won. If we lost, we still had fun. I told my dad when I first started racing that I don't want to race for points. I don't want to race to win. I want to race to have fun.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, I'm never going to make any money doing this, and I'm okay with that. I'm here to have fun. And if I win and I do my personal best, awesome. You know, if I run a 648 instead of a 649, awesome. If I don't, if I run a 650 or a 652, well, I'll come back next week and try to beat it.
Yeah.
But it's a different kind of racing.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, and it's kind of cool because in the last episode I was talking to Jaylee. She said something that's kind of gonna stick with me. Of she can't describe it, but something just pulled her towards racing, and something just keeps
Mm-hmm.
pulling her towards it. And what I had told her is, yeah. And when you try to explain that to somebody who doesn't feel that, you can't. It's just like I don't. And everybody, you said it exactly. I'm never gonna make any money doing this. I'm it's the most expensive hobby I could probably choose, but it's better than doing drugs, so I'm gonna go ahead and pursue it. So but
Yep.
trying to explain to somebody that that thought process who doesn't understand it, it's difficult. And once she said it's like, yeah, no, that's a great way to put it. Like, I can't describe it to you. I know this is not financially sound, but it's fun, and I just want to keep doing it.
Yep. And just to add a little bit to that, getting into drag racing is probably the easiest thing you can do because you can go out and take your everyday driver and take it down the drag strip in the street class. You can take, mom's Ford Focus and do a little burnout in it and take it down the track. There's been countless times where I've, broke something on my race car, unhooked my tow truck that I drive every day, and I brought the car down there with and raced that just to finish the night.
Damn.
It's you can as long as I put the same number on it, I can race whatever I want.
Really? So you can
Yeah,
pull whatever you want to the starting line. You just make a
pretty
pull.
much. As long as you get through tech and all that kind of stuff and make sure that it's all safe, you can really run whatever you want.
Huh. I'll be damned. I'll
Yeah,
be damned.
we've had people wreck their car and still like they won the round, but they wrecked their car somehow. Got their golf cart, put their number on it, and raced their golf cart. I'm telling you, it happens all the time.
Okay. Well, that's a perfect segue into my next. I'll move questions around here, but what is the craziest thing you have seen at the track? Because I hear a golf cart going down the drag strip. That's something different. But
Yeah,
what's one of the craziest things you've seen?
craziest thing I've ever seen. Oh boy, I've seen people push a car down the track just to make a pass. Like they got a bye, right? But the time the round was coming up, they needed to make a pass, and the rules never said this is like a no prep event. So there's different rules than our regular track. It was like a back of the track kind of no prep event, and the rules never said it had to make it under its own power. So they hooked up their golf cart to the back of it with their push bar, to push the car down the track, and they made a bypass excuse me, they made a pass for a bye while pushing the car with their golf cart. That's probably the wildest thing I've ever seen, and I haven't seen anything like it since.
I mean, I've heard of finding the loopholes in rules and pushing the boundaries, but that's definitely finding it. And the track allowed it. They're like, yeah, you kind of got me there. Or...
It wasn't as long as they were safe about it and they were, they weren't going 100 miles an hour. There was nothing to say they couldn't.
Yeah. Hey, fair enough. Yeah, dude, fair enough.
You know.
What? So
it,
with drag racing, walk me like what does a day at the track look like in drag racing? I could tell you what it looks like for dirt racing, but what is,
mhm.
what do you what's your process in getting to the
Yep.
track?
So it's actually really funny you ask about that because our situation is kind of unique. My dad and I both race, so we both drag race. We each have a car. My dad has a '69 Camaro with an 800 horsepower big block in it. His is wicked fast, and mine is just this little, something I've had since I was 14. And we take our RV and we have a stacker trailer. A lot of racers have stacker trailers, but they don't have two cars in it. We have two cars in it and the golf cart. So we're basically a traveling circus.
Yeah.
And it draws eyes very quickly. So immediately when we show up to our local track, everybody's watching us because they're wanting to see this traveling circus get into the track for one.
Right.
And then when we get there, we unload cars. We're putting up canopies. My mom's very, very helpful with the checking air pressures and tires and putting battery chargers on cars and getting the golf cart out. That way my dad and I can focus on what we need to do as racers. Once we get all the cars, the cars are warmed up and everything's up to temperature, we're suited up, we're ready to go. They have about 3-hour window where you have just open test and tune. You can make as many passes as you want. We're a smaller track, so we don't have a limited amount of passes. At a bigger track, you're going to have, okay, you only get 3 passes, or you only get 2 passes, or whatever. We get unlimited passes as long as you can make whatever in those 3 hours, and then you have an hour where they prep the track. They're putting BHT or whatever they want to put down on the track. National anthem, you're in the staging lanes, and then it's elimination. So you have, it's basically round robin. They call up your class, and whoever you line up against is who you're racing. And it could be your buddy. It could be some guy you've never met. I've raced my dad many, many, many times, just because I happened to line up against him,
Right.
So it's very hometown, but it's very similar to dirt track racing. Like I've helped buddies dirt track race. My buddy has a hobby stock, and it's similar, but it's not exactly the same.
Sure. No, that makes sense. Definitely makes sense. So, what does the future look like for you then? And it doesn't have to just be racing. Like, kind of what's some, what are you working towards in the future in racing, out of racing? Whatever direction you want to head with that.
Yep, my first deal is my girlfriend's in college right now, and it makes it hard to move anywhere and buy her own house. It makes it hard to race when I work every other weekend, because I've only been racing once this year. And I try to race every weekend I can, but schedules get in the way, So working towards that going every other weekend while juggling family and friends and all that kind of stuff. For a 22-year-old, it makes it difficult to have an outside life, work, and race.
Right.
So I've definitely cut back on racing. And it sucks. I have that itch every day to go racing, but I just can't. I work on the car every day, but it just makes it difficult. So my future would be I'd love to continue what I'm doing. It just makes it a little more difficult once life gets in the way.
Sure. Once you, if you're, hopefully you're able to get back to it more consistently, are you wanting to stay in the same class that you're in now? Or are you wanting to move up in classes? Or...
Yeah, I'd probably stay in the same class only because the class that we're in is so broad.
Mm-hmm.
You could be as slow as a 7-second 8-mile car and as fast as, whatever you want to be. You could be a 4.5-second car racing a 7-second car. which is called bracket racing. And I hesitated to bring up bracket racing because that is a whole new can of worms that if you're not, it's, let me take a second to explain it.
Yeah, please, by all means. Yeah.
It's cool. So bracket racing is the most fair way to drag race, in my opinion. I mean, you have regular heads-up racing where you go as fast as you can. Bracket racing is you can take a 6-second car racing a 9-second eighth mile car. So a 6-second eighth mile car versus a 9-second car. That 9-second car is going to leave 3 seconds earlier than the 6-second car. And by the time they get to the finish line, they're going to be at the same spot.
Yeah.
It's very, very complicated.
That's cool,
but
though.
It makes it more fair. It looks really wild. If you ever get a chance, any of the people watching this or yourself get a chance, look up bracket racing, drag racing, bracket racing, whatever you want to call it. It is the most, excuse my language, but it's the most ass backwards way to race you've ever seen.
Yeah.
It evens the playing field to the point where I can race a 4-second car, or I can race a 7-second car, and we're going to end up at the finish line about the same time if we run the same times.
Do you know how much fun that sounds, though? Like,
Super fun.
The dude chasing the car, like, you're sitting there like,
Yeah.
Okay, I gotta go. But then you get to run him down. And if you're the guy in front, you're like, I gotta haul ass now.
Yep.
Hopefully I get there. And then you still get there. Damn. That's cool as shit.
It is so cool, and it was a big learning curve for me because all I knew was NHRA where they both leave at the same time and first one to get there. Well, not everybody's going to be the exact same time. Not everybody's going to be a 650 car or a 430 or 450 car. So it makes everybody play the same rules.
Yeah.
So that's why I say I probably won't move up in a class because the class is so broad.
Sure. So if you're I can't remember the exact time, but if you're a 6-second car right now, right? Like a mid 6-second car, right around there.
Yep.
Do you have like a target that you're trying to hit before you do something completely different with your car? Like, do you know, like, okay, I can take this Malibu and I can get it to a 630. Like, is there something that you're trying to target in that?
The goal is to make it just as fast as my dad's car. There's always a bigger fish, and right now that bigger fish is my dad's car. His car is let's see, it runs a 580. So the 580 is what I want to get to, but to get to that, I'd need to shed about 400 pounds of weight on the car and gain horsepower. So it's kind of in that place where you either spend a ton of money or you get complacent and just do what you do.
Sure.
Because you could spend all that money and not be consistent at all,
Right.
And then you're back to square one.
Right. So then are you like, do you do, and again, this is all from watching Cletus McFarland, but like, do you tune your own cars and all that stuff with like the laptop, or is that not how that works at every level? Or
not at every level. There's a lot of people that do tune their cars with a laptop, but I was always taught on a carburetor. So I'm dealing with, mechanical everything. I'm a mechanical everything kind of person. And even messing with my laptop just worries me because I don't want to mess anything up unless I knew what I was doing. If I learned from somebody and they told me, okay, this is how you do it, this is how you change fuel mapping or whatever. You talk about Cletus, he changes fuel mapping. He says you want that 11.8 or whatever. I mean, I could figure that out, but I like my carburetor where I just got to put a different jet in it and it'll run what I want it to run.
okay, so does your dad's
yes
car?
And no.
Does your dad's car run naturally aspirated as well, or is he running injected?
So we've had it natural. We've kept it naturally aspirated before, but we have put it on nitrous and it runs a lot faster. I think we put a 250 shot in and it ran exponentially faster. It's just very dangerous with the motor that's in it because it's not built for nitrous. It's built for that normal fuel. It's not built for, extremely cold air, which nitrous gives, it's not built to last, you know. So we did it for an exhibition just to see what it'd do, and then we took it directly off. We took it all off because we didn't want to hurt the motor.
Right. So have you ran nitrous on yours? Do you run nitrous on yours, or is it only your carburetor, your naturally aspirated, and all that stuff?
My car is just naturally aspirated, but I have driven my dad's car, which with the nitrous on it, and I think it made a 530 pass, which
Shit.
was probably the fastest pass it's ever made. You know?
Huh.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, and Cletus, you know, he's running those, you know, 5s, 4, 6s, depending on which car. It's like, say he has Eagle, you know, he's gonna run a 4.6 or a 4.3. But if he has Ruby, he's gonna run a 5.2, 5.3, something like that. So it just depends on what caliber of car you have.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah, I think that applies to any style of racing, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So
It does.
it seems to me, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems to me that drag racing could be the biggest money game of them all, though. Am I wrong in that? Because it feels like you can only get so much. Like I could build out a 350 small block, do some work to it, and with a lot of help, and trust me, with a lot of help, because I'm not good with engines, be competitive at a track if I had a decent engine, because then you can rely somewhat on skill. But with drag racing, it feels like, and again, this is my ignorance to it, but it feels like all the talent is in how good you can build an engine and how fast you can react. Am I off base in that?
You're exactly on base with that. I keep going back to Cletus, but he is the prime example of you get what you build. You know, Cletus, he could build take Lumberjack. He's got that El Camino that when he bought it, super, super basic. I compared my car, not looks-wise, but just how it ran wise to that car. You know, very basic, very, you know, not cobbled together, but very home built. You know, it's not like Eagle where it's professionally built. And all the cars that I race against, most of them are home built. There's nobody having a professionally built car. Everybody's putting blood, sweat, and tears into the garage and spending late nights out there and building it themselves. Either they have a buddy build the motor, or because we have a buddy that helped me build my motor. I didn't know how to put it together like that, you know, to put our transmission. We run Power Glide transmissions. I took it to a guy that I knew really well, and he said, yeah, drill an oil spot here. Drill a hole so oil can get in there. I wouldn't have known that. So that's what I mean about family oriented. It's you're not competing against anybody. You're competing against yourself, and if you happen to beat the guy next to you, awesome, cool.
Sure.
But you're not really racing anybody.
Huh. Interesting. Yep. Interesting. A question I like to ask, and I would really like to hear your input on this. But what is some advice that you would give someone who is in my shoes, who doesn't come from it, doesn't come from the money, doesn't have the endless funds for it, and not just towards drag racing, but just racing in general. And I'm first in the family to try it. But what is a piece of advice that you would give somebody who sits in my shoes from your point of view as a drag racer?
My biggest thing, like I said before, come at it with the mindset of have fun. Don't go at it with the mindset as you're gonna win. Nobody is going to be good their first time out. You know, Kyle Larson did not go out and win his first race.
Right.
You know, you're not going to be good right away. Now, keep in mind, there are some people that are good right away, but chances are you're not going to be good right away, and you have to remember that. You have to remember to have fun, because as soon as you don't have fun, you're going to hate what you do, and then you're going to lose interest, and then it'll go away. With drag racing specifically, never look at somebody else's car and expect your car to be that. You know, don't look at somebody's 850 horsepower car and say, yep, mine can be that, because it never will. It's always going to be your own. Something's going to be different. Even if somebody came with me and mirrored my car, you know, had an 80 Malibu, had the same motor that I have, same power glide, same everything, same interior, if they mirrored it, it's not going to be the same. It's never going to be exactly the same. There's two cars that I can think of off the top of my head that are very, very close, and they're still not the same. They still run different times, you know. The same person built the motor, the same person built basically everything, and they're still not the same. So go looking for comparisons. Look at what you have. You can compare lap times, but don't go comparing your car to the next, because it's never going to live up to your expectations. You know, the grass is not always greener on the other side.
That might be the best. I think that might be one of the most sound answers I've had answered on that. That is, it's every time I ask that question, I get an answer where it's like, yeah, why didn't I think of that? But like when you say it just makes so much sense. Like, yeah, my car is not gonna ever be what that is, and your car is never gonna be what mine is. That's
Exactly.
I appreciate you
No two
opening my
cars
eyes
have
there.
ever been the same. Absolutely. Yeah.
Because it's hard to not
Yep.
want to keep up with the Joneses, dude, especially at the racetrack. And I
Hmm.
know you have the double stack hauler, but I remember the first time I went to a local dirt track race up at I-35 Speedway in Winston, Missouri. The first time I went up there was, it was a few weeks back now. But I pulled in and then I got into the pits. It's the first time I have been in the pits at a dirt track, or any, really one of the first times being in the pits in general. And I had this in my head. I'm like, I'm in Winston, Missouri. I'm at a dirt track. These people are going to be like me, and it's going to be a lot of, out of my garage people. I'm going to see people pulling cars with their Tahoes. No.
No.
There was $250,000 haulers driving around
Oh,
that
yeah.
thing like it was going out of style. And I was like,
Yep.
how? And then I started
Yep.
asking the guys I was with, I was like, what are these people? Are these like they professionally race full time, or? And they're like, no, this is just their weekend. Like, yeah, they'll travel a little bit, but this is their weekend hobby. I was like, dude, how do I do that? And then, but now that you say that, you
Yep.
never. And a great piece of advice for anybody that I have been learning is don't keep up with the Joneses, because you never know what their situation looks like. The dude who drives the $250,000
Yeah.
hauler might be $400,000 in debt to just say he has the $250,000 hauler. It's never going to be
Yep.
what it looks like on the outside.
And one of the best racers I have ever seen in my entire life at our track, he pulls in on an open trailer that was built in, I don't know, the 60s, and he will come and kick butt every week. We call him Bad Brad, and I think I've won against him one time in my 8-year career.
Oh,
You
shit.
know, I have won against him one time. He is by far the best racer there, and you'd never know it. He pulls in an open trailer. He used to pull in with his half-ton Chevy pickup. He has a little camper now, but he's a retired body man.
Oh, yeah.
He's the best. In his car is home built. He had it in high school and drove it around and said, "Yep, we're gonna make this a race car." And from the 80s, he just kicks ass.
That's cool. That's super
It's so
cool.
cool.
What's one of your proudest moments in racing, life in general? What's one of your proudest moments that you've had throughout this whole thing?
One of my proudest moments. So the second year of my racing career, I was fortunate enough to be sponsored by Lucas Oil, and
Wow.
it was just a small time sponsorship. I put it on the side of my car. I thought it was hot shit.
Hell yeah, dude. I would
But
too.
and I got free like oil and promotions here and there, but they actually did for the Brainerd Nationals up in Minnesota here. They did, Lucas Oil sponsors that. It's the Lucas Oil Nationals. Everybody knows that.
Right.
And I got chosen to be the honorary starter there at the Brainerd Nationals. I was my second year of racing. It was my first year, racing under the Lucas Oil thing. And all of a sudden I get an email like, you have been chosen to be the honorary starter for the Lucas Oil Nationals. I'm like, okay.
Hell yeah. Where do I sign?
I'm 15 years old. I got to write like a little biography. I got to walk across the stage. I got to meet everybody. I met John Force and Alex Laughlin, and because that was when Alex Laughlin was racing for Gas Monkey Garage
Mm-hmm.
on on the TV show Discovery, whatever.
Right.
And he was really big at that time, and I got to meet him. He was like one of my guys that I looked up to, and John Force was there, and all kinds of people. So it was really big for me, and I've carried that forever. You know, I still think about it. I got a little trophy, you know. But the only other time I can think of that is really, really special to me was we have something called the Sportsman of the Year, right? So basically, everybody at the track gets together and they vote on who they think should be the Sportsman of the Year. It's loyalty to racing, and it's sportsmanship, obviously, and racecraft. You know, you'll hear Dale Jr. talk about racecraft
Mm-hmm.
and how you conduct yourself on and off the track. And I got that one year. It was I think it was the same year as my Lucas Oil deal, and I was beyond grateful. You know, I had struggled all through the year. I'd blown 3 transmissions. I had blown a rear end. I had blown a lot of things, and I just kept coming back. You know, kept fixing it, and I got rewarded for it. Does that happen every year? No, but it was such a proud moment for me because it made everything worth it. It made those nights after school worth it. You know, I'd come home from sports. I ran cross country, so I was tired, and all I wanted to do was go to sleep, but I knew I had a car to put back together before the weekend.
Right.
And it just made it all worth it for sure. So those two moments are my top of the list, you know.
Well, yeah, that's definitely nothing to shake a stick at, dude. Especially if you accomplished
No,
that stuff in your first 2 years. Like that's something to absolutely be proud of and wear on your sleeve. And
exactly.
congratulations on that, man. Not a lot of people can say
Yeah.
that.
Thank you. No.
Well, that's my questions that I have. But what I like to do for kind of the last little bit, of these interviews is kind of open it up to you guys. We can talk about anything you want to talk about. If there's something you want to talk about that you feel strongly about, or a piece of your story that you haven't gotten a chance to share, or anything like that, kind of the floor is yours.
Yep. So one story that I do want to mention, and I don't want to toot my own horn. It's something that I love doing for, the community down at the racetrack. Is I have a passenger seat in my car. So I have a full restraint system and the passenger seat and 5-point harness and all that in the side of my car. And one day I got a call from somebody down at the track and said they have a relative, I believe it was, with spina bifida. So he was very small. His name was Shawn also. And they said he wanted to ride in the car. I'm like, okay. Well, let me figure out some things first because I don't want to hurt the kid. I don't know what is going to hurt him. I don't want to, do anything I'm not supposed to with his doctors or anything like that. And they were all comfortable with it. I got back to him, my insurance company, I don't know what they thought, but we didn't really ask either. So,
Right.
But the track's insurance was the one I was worried about, and they didn't care. They thought it was a good idea, and it showed kind of the family aspect of what the track wanted to accomplish. And so we get him in the car, and he's got his helmet on. And before I get in, I asked the parents, "Are you okay with me doing a full pass, or do you want me to do a half hit? Do you want me to just leave off of idle? How would you like me to make this pass? Because I don't want to scare him. I don't want to
Right.
hurt him. I don't want to do anything. Because it's a big risk. You're getting in a 3,000-pound vehicle that goes 104 miles an hour in 6.5 seconds.
Right.
And the parents were fully on board with me making a full pass. This kid doesn't really talk much, so he didn't really say anything to me, and I'm okay with that. I said I introduced myself because I knew that he reacts facially wise. So I do my burnout. I do everything that I normally do with a regular pass. Excuse me. I made a pass, and it's loud in there. My headers exit underneath my car. And I'm slowing down after this pass, and I'm still doing, 80 miles an hour as I'm slowing down. And I look over, and he is laughing. I'm like, oh my goodness. He's actually showing emotion, and I tell the parents this, and they're like, really? He doesn't do that apparently too often. So
Wow.
it was nice for me to think about, okay, I just made this kid's year probably. you know. And I didn't do it for, you know, the publicity. I did it because this kid's never going to get this chance again. And I would love for this kid to have this opportunity because I don't know how long he has or what his condition is, you know. So we get done and everybody's thanking me, and I go home at night and I made the mistake of reading comments, and I shouldn't say mistake because it overwhelmed me. It was such an outpour of congratulations, oh, you're such a good person. And it kind of made me break down a little bit. I'm like, I didn't realize how much of an impact it would have on not only my community, but me, that kid, his parents, and everybody else. I never realized what drag racing as a sport could be, you know. And it is a sport. We're all athletes. It's 140 in that car. So, you know, we're all family and we all do it together. And if I have anything to take away from my racing career, it'll be those three things: the Lucas Oil thing, the Sportsman of the Year, and that kid. And I will never ever forget that. If I don't race another day in my life, I will always be able to talk about that.
Yeah, and that is the beauty of the sport, you know, as you say. It's the how much it can bring people together, how much it can change lives, you know. And it's not like a small thing to shake a stick at, you know. And I think it's commendable how you've dedicated your livelihood with being a police officer to serving the community, but to see yourself intertwine that into your racing career and be able to give back, and to even have the passenger seat, like, I think that's awesome because of how much that racing can give back, you know. Yeah, I don't even know how to put that into words. I know what I'm thinking, but I don't necessarily know how to put it into words. Just know that that's a beautiful thing, dude.
Yep.
And I'm sure that nobody in that area who is there for that will ever forget that moment either, because that's super special,
No.
dude.
It was awesome, and it just baffled me how strong the drag racing community was. You know, before then, when I was 13, I started racing when I was 14. So when I was 13, I didn't realize how strong the drag racing community was. And I just thought, oh, they go in a straight line, you know, like everybody else thinks they go in a straight line, they're done. But I didn't realize all what it took until I got into it, and I'm like, oh, this is fun. This is really fun. I don't ever want to stop doing this, you know. And it just snowballed from there and got to the point where I can't stop, you know. It's
Right.
an addiction now.
Yeah. Yeah, that's why I tell my wife when she tells me how expensive this is going to be when eventually I get into it. I'm like, hey, it's better than drugs. You know, it's an addiction, like you say. So it's like, well, it's better than doing drugs. I'm going to go
Yep.
race cars instead.
Yep.
Oh,
I have had somebody say that a drug addiction would have been cheaper.
dude, do you know how many people have told me that? Like, that's
Yep. Yep.
I've had like 3 or 4 people said, bro, drugs would be cheaper, man. Just warning you. I'm
Yep.
like, yeah, well, I'd rather do this, man.
I do have one more story, and it's kind
Yeah.
of backtracking to the start of really my car. It's not really for me. So I have this picture back here. I don't know how well anybody's going to see it,
Yeah,
but
it looks
this is
great.
my car when it was back in 1995. Okay,
Wow.
so it used to be a dare car. I don't know if you guys ever had dare, but it was basically a drug prevention program for kids. They did it in middle school and that kind of stuff. So the local police department they owned this car, and it had been impounded for drugs in 1980. So the car was like 6 months old when they impounded it for drugs. They stripped it down, made it a race car, and then drove it around in parades. Well, it had police department on the side, and it had dare, and they used it for their promotional vehicle. When that cop retired, they just shoved it away. Nobody saw it from 2001 to when we bought it in 2016. So everybody thought this car had been destroyed, and well, everybody didn't think it was destroyed, but nobody thought it was around. You know, nobody had seen it. But when we found it, it was all white. It didn't have anything on it, and I like to look back in history and see what cars used to look like and that kind of stuff. I have a classic car. I like the history of things, you know. So when I found that That's a brochure from 1995 for the Humboldt County Dragway, which is where we race at. And I found this, and it just happened to be that my car was on the front of it. I didn't know that my car was on the front of it until somebody told me, like, that's your car. That's the same car that you're racing now. And it baffled me that a car that nobody had heard from came back and is now a regular figure, for the last 8 years at the same track. So it's just kind of cool to see how things progress. Dirt racing is the same way. Things progress. So drag racing kind of is the same. Technology improves, but what we do with carburetors, it kind of stays the same as it was in the 80s, 90s, 2000s, whatever. And that's what's very unique about this, because it doesn't really progress. You can progress it, but it doesn't have to.
Right.
I could put my car up against Ruby from Cletus, and it would race it. It wouldn't win, but it would be close.
Sure.
So that's because you could never take a car from 1980 on the dirt track, a modified from 1980, and put it up against a brand new car and expect it to win.
Right.
It wouldn't have a chance. So it's just cool to take cars from all eras and smash them together and see what happens.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if nothing else, and I hope that everybody else took as much away from all of this as I have, because I know that, and I'm honest to God, I'm probably still going to be hitting you up after all this is said and done, because my mind just works like that, where I'm just going to keep thinking of questions, and I'm just going to keep bugging you about them, because now that's super.
Absolutely.
It's a very interesting form of racing that I've observed, but never really observed, if that makes sense. And I'll make sure. I mean, I think I'm like 6 hours south of you, but hell, maybe one day I'll see if I can make the trip up one day, and I'll go watch some drag racing and see what that's all about.
Drag racing, it's easy to get into. All you got to do is watch. Sit there in the stands for 2 hours and you'll figure it out.
Right.
It's not terribly complicated.
Right. Well, awesome, Mr. Shawn. Well, if you do you have anything else that you'd like to add to anything, or anything else that you need shout outs?
I don't have anything for me. No, I don't have any shout outs, just my normal local sponsors. I got Feely Transmission. I've got the Fab Shop, all in Welcome. I've got to thank my family, my dad Jesse, my mom Chris, my brother Logan. They all help me a lot. My girlfriend Alyssa, she's new to drag racing, but she is quickly learning, and it's a huge help. It really, really helps when all I can focus on is racing.
Yeah.
So if I thank anybody else, it's going to be my family. They're the ones that make it possible.
No, absolutely. Well, man, thank you, Shawn, so much for coming on, and I hope you have a great rest of your night, man.
You have a good one. Thank you.